How to Deal with an Unpredictable Future. The Black Swan is authored by renowned writer Nassim Nicholas Taleb. This book explores those highly impactful, hard-to-predict events, what Taleb calls black swan events, and how these events trigger dramatic changes in both history and personal lives. Many major events are difficult to foresee, yet when they occur, they have profound consequences. We are accustomed to viewing the world as predictable, often relying on data and models to make forecasts. However, such predictions frequently prove inadequate in the face of black swan events. Recognizing our limited ability to foresee the future, people are encouraged to adopt more resilient strategies to confront uncertainty. By increasing our sensitivity to risk and reducing our reliance on precise predictions, we can better navigate uncontrollable changes and unexpected events. This book offers valuable insights across various fields, including finance, business, and personal decision-making. Now, let's dive into the main content. On September 11, 2001, the world was shaken by the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Reflecting on history, on September 4, 2001, people were still celebrating the prosperity of the American stock market. No one anticipated that just a week later, the World Trade Center in New York would be attacked, with many choosing to jump from the high floors rather than perish in the flames. In 2008, the global financial crisis erupted. The bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, a century-old institution, accelerated the market's collapse. At the time, the market was filled with the optimistic belief that this time is different, and many investors thought that real estate prices would only continue to rise, overlooking the potential risks. However, black swan events are often unpredictable yet have a tremendous impact. Facing the sudden financial crisis, most people were caught off guard, even losing their life savings. Black swan events have 5 main characteristics. 1. They are unpredictable. 2. Their impact is immense. 3. They can be explained in hindsight. 4. They focus on a very few extreme events. 5. They are not forecasted. For example, investors often focus only on success stories that create wealth myths, while ignoring the lessons of failure. The occurrence of black swan events reminds us to remain humble in the face of an unknown future and not to be overconfident. We should manage risks wisely and not put all our eggs in one basket. We should remember that the lessons of history often repeat in different forms, and what we must do is learn from them to avoid making the same mistakes. On September 11, 2001, a shocking terrorist attack occurred, but before that, few were aware of the threat of terrorism, nor did anyone anticipate its immense impact. Similarly, the 2008 financial crisis took everyone by surprise. At the time, many experts believed the financial system was very stable. No one foresaw the subprime crisis or that it would lead to a global economic recession. The financial crisis can be seen as a black swan event, meaning it is unexpected, has a major impact, and people will later try to find rational explanations for its occurrence. Yet, we often ignore those unpredictable events, while focusing too much on those that can be predicted. How should we prepare ourselves for a future filled with unknowns? First, we should not attempt to predict the unpredictable, as this will only increase our risk. Second, we must prepare to face unexpected events and maintain the ability to adapt flexibly. Lastly, remember that black swan events can also have positive effects, like Columbus discovering the New World, which brought new opportunities to humanity. History, like financial markets, is filled with unforeseen events. Hidden risks may lie within what appears to be a peaceful, stable life. Historians try to find patterns from past events to predict future trends, but this effort is often in vain because history is full of randomness and cannot be explained with simple cause and effect relationships. In northern Syria, in a place called Aleppo, different ethnicities and religions once coexisted. Over 1,000 years ago, it was a center of culture and commerce. But over time, Aleppo experienced numerous wars and destruction, eventually becoming an ordinary town. The course of history resembles a random walk, lacking a fixed direction or goal. Trying to learn lessons from history or predict the future is akin to gambling. Our understanding of history is often influenced by the 3-layer filter. First, we only remember events that were recorded, while unrecorded events are forgotten. Second, we tend to believe historical narratives that align with our views and beliefs, ignoring those that contradict them. Lastly, we often judge past events using modern concepts and values, overlooking the historical context and cultural differences of that time. As a result, our understanding of history is often partial, distorted, and even erroneous. Historians attempt to restore historical truth through various methods, but their efforts are often influenced by subjective factors. For instance, some historians may intentionally conceal or distort facts to achieve political objectives, while others may be influenced by personal emotions or biases, leading to biased judgments. Even the most objective historian cannot completely escape subjective influences. The topics they choose to study, the materials they collect, and the methods they use to analyze are inevitably shaped by their own backgrounds and experiences. History is like a vast puzzle, of which we can only see a small part. We cannot know all the truths, nor can we predict the future's trajectory. But we can draw lessons from history, reflect on our actions, and approach the future with more caution and humility. 5 years ago, a small businessman working in an obscure place, with no significant success, began pursuing a non-academic interest in science. He avidly read books, searching for novel ideas, and at any moment, used all available time, faithfully following the newest sprouting ideas in his mind. He spent time reading April Fool's Day joke news articles, treating repeated errors in books as factual. He began searching for a black swan perspective that could make him a long-term speculator. He read an academic article titled On the Bulky College Syllabus, and wrote a program to find and define words in the book that he didn't understand. His business faced repeated devastating blows, but he usually managed to survive. Throughout this, most news media failed to predict upcoming events, but he paid no attention and had no time to analyze all the inevitably shocking events in the New York Times. He also began to develop a vague concept, exploring non-predictive events or black swans. During this process, he started reading articles in the biology journal Cell, avoiding finance and economics articles related to his expertise and instead focusing on other disciplines like biology, astronomy, statistics, and mathematics, to avoid being confined by a single field's framework. He preferred broad reading, believing scholars naturally enclose themselves within their field, viewing external matters as irrelevant. It took him 5 years to find the black swan perspective that would allow him to become a long-term speculator and ultimately become a professional trader. He started his own business, set up a company, and nearly all his ventures failed. Eventually, his business stabilized, evolving into a firm with 40 partners, each managing independent accounts in various ways. Minority shareholders also contributed information, as each partner gathered exclusive information about specific industries from many unconventional sources. However, he mentioned that they no longer trade stocks, their capital operations are completely detached from stock trading. For the average person, scientists use imprecise terms, and some academic writing is known for its brevity. Some scholars package simple concepts with high-sounding terms. Through this approach, he found Gregory Bateson's arguments, discovered in interdisciplinary literature across many fields he barely understood. For him, academic learning was a gift. We live in a world full of randomness, where many events cannot be predicted. Take the example of a historian, Giacomo, who wrote books on violin craftsmanship in the late 19th century, only to see his work lose value with the invention of the phonograph. This event was unpredictable, rendering Giacomo's efforts futile. This unpredictability arises from the black swan effect. The black swan effect refers to unexpected events with profound impacts, making accurate future predictions challenging and creating a phenomenon known as extremism. Extremism describes a world dominated by a few extreme events. In extremism, the tremendous success or failure of a few significantly influences the whole. For example, in the music industry, a handful of stars capture most of the market's revenue, while most musicians earn modest incomes. This phenomenon also appears in wealth distribution, book sales, technological innovation, and more. Extremism's emergence is due to globalization and scale expansion brought by technological progress. The internet and modern transportation have enabled the rapid dissemination of information and goods, amplifying the influence of a few successful individuals. In the past, geographical constraints limited people's reach and the influence of the few. For instance, a skilled craftsman might be famous only locally. However, in the age of globalization, a successful musician can spread their work worldwide via online platforms and gain vast wealth. In extremism, traditional statistical methods struggle to predict the future accurately because these methods assume a world of mediocrity, where events follow a bell curve and most occurrences cluster around the average. However, in extremism, a few extreme events skew the average, rendering traditional statistics ineffective. For example, if Bill Gates joins a group of 1,000 people, the group's average wealth will skyrocket, but this does not mean everyone else became rich. Therefore, in extremism, we need new ways of thinking to understand the world and anticipate the future. In facing the black swan effect and extremism, we should adopt the following strategies: avoid over-reliance on traditional statistical methods. Focus on extreme events that could have significant impacts. Maintain flexibility and adaptability to cope with unpredictable changes. The black swan effect and extremism remind us that the world is full of uncertainty. We cannot predict everything, but by changing our mindset and adopting appropriate strategies, we can meet these challenges. People often overestimate their knowledge. For example, a stockbroker may attribute their market gains to their deep understanding, ignoring the role of luck. This phenomenon, called empiricism, tricks us into thinking past experience can fully predict the future. In reality, we should remain humble, recognizing the many black swan events we cannot foresee. Take the example of the turkey problem over 1001 days. A turkey, after being fed for 1000 days, may assume it will continue to be fed, only to be slaughtered on the 1001st day. This example highlights the limitations of induction. No matter how much data we observe, it cannot guarantee the future will follow the same pattern as the past. History also offers many examples of black swan events. For instance, in the stock market crash of 1987, a seemingly stable market collapsed overnight. Similarly, the Nobel Prize-winning team behind long-term capital management went bankrupt due to overconfidence. These events remind us not to rely too much on past experience and always be prepared for sudden crises. The roots of empiricism trace back to ancient Greece. Skeptics like Sextus Empiricus already recognized the limits of human knowledge, questioning the certainty of all knowledge and believing we could never truly understand the nature of the world. However, empiricism has dominated history and has only recently come under greater scrutiny. In the realm of religion, empiricism has led people to question the existence of God. Because empirical evidence cannot prove God's existence, some believe God does not exist. However, the relationship between faith and reason is complex. We should not simply use empiricism to deny faith. In summary, we should be wary of the pitfalls of empiricism, maintaining humility and an open mind to better face a world full of unknowns. We always try to infer outcomes from visible events, like assuming that because no black swans have been seen in the past 100 years, black swans do not exist. This is a confirmation bias, where we ignore unseen, unpredictable events, assuming conclusions drawn from past experiences always apply to the future. In life, we often make incorrect judgments due to confirmation bias. For instance, suppose a group of experimenters stays in a lab for 10 days, being told daily that they will be shocked, but only half are actually shocked. At the end of the experiment, when asked how fearful they felt, all reported feeling very afraid, showing that even those who were not shocked felt fear due to expectation. Confirmation bias is also prevalent in medicine. Some doctors prescribe unnecessary medication or conduct needless tests based on patients' symptoms, seemingly as prevention, but it actually only reassures themselves and the patient without solving the real problem. We must understand that no evidence does not mean non-existence. For example, in the 1960s, doctors mistakenly believed that ulcers were caused by stress, only to later discover they were due to bacterial infection. This example shows that past experience and knowledge are not always correct. We should remain open-minded, continually learning and refining our views. Using falsification can help us avoid confirmation bias. Falsification asserts that a theory only has scientific value if it can be disproven. In other words, we should actively seek evidence that could disprove our views, rather than solely searching for supporting evidence. Philosopher Karl Popper first proposed the concept of falsification. He argued that scientific progress relies not on continually accumulating correct knowledge, but on continually eliminating erroneous theories. Falsification plays an important role in the history of science. For example, the theory of continental drift was initially controversial, but geological and paleontological evidence gradually led to its acceptance in the scientific community. This example demonstrates that even seemingly absurd theories can become scientific truths if they withstand the test of falsification. We can also use thought experiments to practice falsification. For example, imagine you see 4 cards with 2, 4, 6, and 8 on them. If you want to prove the statement all even numbers are divisible by 2, which card should you turn over? The answer is to turn over the card with an odd number. If it is even, it does not confirm the statement, only finding an odd number that is not divisible by 2 can disprove it. Falsification is a powerful tool that helps us avoid confirmation bias and make more rational judgments. In the fall of 2004, I attended a conference on religion and superstition. Eager to give a lecture, I overlooked the main topic. The professors studying religion were so knowledgeable, they spoke all afternoon, and the lecture content and theme exceeded my expectations. He realized that the events he attended initially seemed promising but later turned chaotic, with his own lecture deviating from the theme. He felt he had made the same mistake everyone makes, overestimating randomness and underestimating the neglected, unnoticed events. This reminded him of past conference experiences, especially in the social sciences. Participants would always use a small set of data to explain a broad, complex topic, ignoring the overlooked data. He began questioning the limitations of this way of thinking, believing we need to consider the impact of those neglected, unnoticed events. We always focus on what is known, and even when we recognize the existence of the unknown, we interpret it within the framework of known things, rationalizing the unknown. For example, if we study a woman's romantic history, we may predict her future romantic patterns based on her experiences. We may assume a woman with a rich romantic history will continue having more relationships in the future. To illustrate our understanding of symmetry, imagine a king who hires an astrologer to predict his future. The astrologer tells the king that his son will be killed by a wild boar upon reaching adulthood. To prevent the prophecy from coming true, the king forbids his son from ever encountering wild boars. However, his son is eventually killed by a bull during a hunt. We always try to explain unknown things using what we know, but unknowns may differ entirely from what we know. Our way of thinking is limited by what we know, and black swan events break through these limitations, making us realize the possibilities of the unknown. A black swan event refers to those events we cannot predict, but which create enormous impacts once they occur. For instance, on a December day in 2003, the author was in Beirut, Lebanon, with friends. They planned to go skiing the next day, as a friend said the snow in Lebanon was excellent. However, just as they were preparing to leave, the Lebanese government announced that roads to the ski resort were closed due to regional instability. The occurrence of black swan events often makes us reevaluate our understanding of the world and forces us to adjust our way of thinking. The narrative fallacy is our tendency to explain events through stories, even if those stories may be fictitious. For example, people often enjoy explaining stock market fluctuations with stories, even if these stories have no basis. Silent evidence refers to evidence that is ignored or forgotten. We tend to focus on evidence supporting our views and ignore evidence that contradicts them. We often overestimate our understanding of the world, but black swan events remind us how limited our knowledge of the world truly is. We should remain humble, acknowledge our limited understanding of the world, and prepare for the occurrence of black swan events. We should focus on neglected evidence and learn from black swan events. We should develop a new way of thinking to face the challenges of black swan events. We should avoid the narrative fallacy and refrain from using stories to explain events. We should avoid confirmation bias and not only focus on evidence supporting our views. We should acknowledge our limited understanding of the world and prepare for black swan events. We should develop a new way of thinking to meet the challenges of black swan events. The world is full of randomness, and everyone's career can be affected by unexpected events. Like a person who originally worked in publishing but later became a trader because he realized that, in this highly random society, scientific and academic patterns are more predictable than business. Our career development is not entirely within our control, it is often shaped by the randomness of the environment. We cannot predict the future but can only understand it after events have occurred. Like an antique bookseller who planned to sell medieval alchemist manuscripts in his shop, only to see them go up in flames during a forest fire. Even when we strive to learn, we may not acquire correct knowledge. Harold Bloom.